Hey guys, this is Eric Weingartner with Weingartner Racing. This video is about the intake manifold dyno test. As you guys have probably watched for the last few weeks, you have been paying attention to how they did. And I've been breaking them down into sets of 3. And you're like, there's only 2 here. The third one's still in the motor. So it was left there to kind of keep it sealed up. But I'm gonna go over these ones. This is our last set for this. This is the Proffessional Products Hurricane intakes. Now, both of these have the same exact part number. They were just made at a different time, and the design is different because of it. So we're going to go through them relatively quickly. Now, here's what's weird. This was the second place finisher. So this one finished second from the best. The best one is still in the engine. It'd be one in between. You can go back and watch some of my previous videos to see that intake manifold. And I may cut it in here. So if you see it at the end of the video, you'll understand what I did. I'm not very good at editing, but I'm better at testing. So anyway, this is one of the earlier ones. So if you were back in the day and wanted to get one of the Hurricanes, it was this manifold. And I remember seeing magazine articles in it and some of the stuff that they'd put out saying, oh, it beats everything. And of course, you know, there's always some skeptical parts of that because you're like, really? You could beat the Super Victor and everything else, and it claimed it could. And I remember they did run well, but it's hard to know. Anyway, so this manifold was also really relatively cheap. And several of you have pointed out, hey, this looks a lot like the bow tie. The GM bow tie intake manifold looks similar. I would say there it does, and there it does, but nothing in here. So you're like, yeah, it does. This plenum top does. Yeah, but these runners sure don't. And the way they enter don't. There's no way you could say it's that. So this was one of the earlier ones that came out. I actually really do like these manifolds. I had one when they first came out. Here's what makes them more different. They've got this big fat divider here. The second one, which I'm going to try to cut in at the end, its dividers will look something like this, much thinner, much thinner. So these ones are, you know, that. When you port these, they end up very, very good. So we're going to get this find out, obviously, but I really do like this manifold. With the big runners, if you're a porter, you know, you can do the right things. You can really make this really, really well. However, it still finished second. It was really close to finishing first. So, nice manifold. The version 2, which hopefully I'll cut into the end, what Proffessional Products have done is they essentially just had someone port this. And so instead of having this big old fat runner here, and by the way, it's not fat the whole way. It's like a tear dropped out. So you could think of like a ball of aluminum right here, like a rounded big old blob, then it narrows down. So it's easy to tell how much to port to remove. So anyway, that was it. The version 2 looked like they had just ported that and they cast that, and that was version 2. That one was actually the one that finished best, but it was modified. See, this one's completely stock. No work's been done to it. The port openings are exactly the same they were for Proffessional Products. The version 2 that gets dynoed, it's a bit different in the fact that I had purchased from an auction and someone had tried port matching it. Hopefully you can watch this at the end of the video. They did a horrible job. And I really thought, and so did Gary at Dunsworth, that was going to be one of the worst ones. No, it ended up being the best. So that's why we test. This version is version 3. This to me is the newest one. It looks really nice and shiny, but it's a vast difference from what it was before. So as you can tell, the plenum top looks different. The runners themselves are now thinner, and this is what I don't like. The outside, by the way, still looks the same. Ignore these tubes. That's a different video. We'll talk about why these are here and what they're for. But the outside looks exactly the same. That's what I mean. People say, well, that's a knockoff of the bow tie. From the outside, yeah, I can give you that. But that is not the same as that. And it's not the same as bow tie on either one. Similar, kind of, but not really. Especially not now. The thing I don't like is the version 2, essentially they ported this, but it left this wall straight, so it's like the way it should be. This is out and actually now making a curve, so it's turned in. So in order to port it to where the wall would be straight, because there's a curve right through there, which you can't see because my finger's in the way, you'd end up making these too thin, and it just wouldn't be right, so it's kind of stuck. There still could be some port work done, especially on the roof here, but that's stuck. The outside runner looks really good. Nice line of sight that. So, but it's different. Of the 3 manifolds, this one finished worse. Version 1 and version 2, even though that one was bad port match, were really close to the same. This one finished 3rd overall out of the 12 manifolds tested, but it was still quite a ways from what those other two were, especially that one. So something to think about. But anyway, let's go ahead and look at the data. Let's look at the overlays and also the hard data. Okay, here's the data. Before I talk about it, I want to talk about a couple other things really, really fast. I said at the beginning of the video I was going to talk about these tubes in another video. No, I'm going to talk about them right after I'm done with the data. So we'll talk about what I did that for. Second thing, if you're really wanting this data and you're like, I can't see this YouTube screen, you need to do something or whatever, this is available in a book. I'm selling these books. These right here is what it looks like, and it's got all the data from all the tests. There's graphs in here from everything, not just this video, every one of them. Plus the specs on the heads, literally everything about the dyno meals so far. This book costs $38 shipped. If you want it, all you gotta do is email me at weingartnerracing@gmail.com, or my website, wengines.com, has a link to my shop website, and it's got like t-shirts, dyno mule donation, and this book. So there you go. Anyway, let's get to the data. This is Hurricane, the version 1, the one that's the oldest one of them. It ended up finishing second, but not by much. If you notice, its peak power came in at 566.3 horsepower. That's really, really good. Its torque came in at 534. So both of those are higher than any of the other manifolds, the 2892, any of the other ones. They just are. Very good numbers there. If you notice also, it pulls in 658 CFM. I only mention that because some of the other ones, they're pulling in actually more air, but it's making less power. And I also don't know if I mentioned this in the book or in this video, because I went back and watched what I recorded. The dyno meals are 406 small block Chevy, AFR enforcer heads, untouched, solid roller cam, 260, 270, 680 lift, 11.2 compression ratio, 1000 CFM carburetor. Although if you watch any of my other videos, you already knew about that anyway. So anyway, this is Hurricane version 1. And anyway, so let's go to version 2. This one's different. Remember, this is the one that got, oops, that's version 3. So there's version 2. Okay. This is version 2. This is the one that's been, well, actually, let's do version 3. That's this version, because I forgot this one wasn't the last one. This goes in order. This is version 3, which is this one. This one does well, and it ends up finishing third overall out of the 12 manifolds. It had 562 almost horsepower right there. Actually, right there, it did have 562 at 65. So it kind of come back up. And it made quite a bit less torque than the others at 525 about, at 5,100 RPM. And it pulled in a little bit less CFM. Not that really makes everything, but anyway, so that one, as you could tell, it's down a little bit from that one, and completely stock, and it says no tubes. And I'll explain about this in just a minute. Just give me a second. All right, now to the version 2. So this is the one that has a bad port match, and I'm gonna draw a picture and to show you what I mean by how bad the port match is, although I'm gonna try to put a picture at the end of this video so you can see this manifold to see what I'm talking about. But it was very close, but it did beat the version 1 of the manifold of the Hurricane. Now it made 564, and you're like, that's not better than the 566 the other one made. It also made almost 535 foot-pounds of torque. But when you look at the averages, that's 524 and 507. Okay, let's go to the Hurricane version 1. And don't worry, I'm gonna show you a graph on this in just a minute. These pages are super slick. And that's it. So look, 523.5 to a 524.1. So close, but still win. 506.7 to a 507.4. So yeah, this one just barely edged it out. Now this is the weird part. It's hard to say if it was the port match, the bad port match, and I'll try to draw a picture in a second to show you what I mean, or if it was the port design that made it better. Because my thought is, the reason why it was slightly better had nothing to do with the bad port match. It was because those runners had been thinner, that made more power difference, and it made up for the bad port match. So if maybe it had been stock, it would have been even better than what you saw here, and it had been a clear winner. But anyway, let's look at the graph so you kind of see this. Here you go. So we have all three on this to kind of give you an idea. You've got the red is version 1. Version 3 is in black. And version 2 is in blue. And if you look at the black one, you can tell the version 3, that's this one. It's noticeably down from them. So considerably down. This is the one, if you order now, you get this. So it's a mistake. Because obviously it's down almost the entire way except for the little spike right here. But other than that, it's not very good. Version 1 and 2, they're really close. And if you look, version 1's actually better. Sorry, version 2, this is the reason why it kind of wins. It's better here, as you can tell, because the red line's below it. And then there's parts where they're together, and then it a little bit better there. So only through here and through here that it's really better. And then the version 1's actually a little bit better through here. So, but an average, and it's really close, not even 1 horsepower difference, that version 2 is better. But it's the only one of all the manifolds that had been modified. None of the rest have been. So that's that. In other words, if you can get a hit, and someone had said, ever since you put out these videos, that on eBay, the Hurricanes went from $130 down to like $180 to $200. I actually contacted Proffessional Products, and I was like, hey, man, I don't know if you pay attention to my worthless YouTube channel, but you might want to, if it was me and I was in your position, I would be pumping that on my website because you'd sell more, or you'd change and go back to the one you were at. I was thinking maybe they'll call me back. No call. Makes no sense. But anyway, I also wanted to get more information to spread on to you guys. Like, is this one just was available for a little time, or can you get the version 2 still, or no, or what's going on? No answer. Anyway, so there's that. So hopefully you got something out of it. If you can find the old Hurricane, it's a good choice. Even version 2 is a good choice. This one, it's better than most of the other, so it still beat 9 of them, but it's not as good as the others. Now, let me talk about these tubes. This is the story with the tubes. Probably more than you want to know, but whatever. My wife was talking to me, and just like several of your spouses do, sometimes weird things just pop in your head that have nothing to do with what she's saying. Because I didn't hear a word she was saying. I'm sure she was talking, but anyway, I like an inspiration popped in, and I'm like, what if you could capture the wave energy of opposing cylinders and transfer it into the other ones? How could you do that? And I thought, let's tubes. And I have to say, I do a lot of stupid stuff, but this one's pretty dumb. But I was hoping for not if it just did good. If it did bad, I'd be happy, because it would give me something that was like, then there's a cause. What I didn't want to have happen was it to do almost the same, which is practically what it is. But here's the idea, and this is just rough guess. I looked at an engine was apart, and I looked at when the pistons were in opposite directions, which I know you're like, well, cam timing has more to do with it. True, but I was kind of in a rush just to give this a thought. So in other words, as this piston was coming up, that one was going down. So like 1 and 4 and all the other ones. So I found their opposing ones where the pistons were working in the opposite cycle. So I thought, I will give that a shot. So what I did is I tapped each one of these. And this is a 3/8 NPT, and just got a -6 line. For the record, I tried to get the cheapest hose I could, and that's a Summit hose. And if you ever use it for fuel line, don't. This is garbage, but it worked fine for what I'm doing here. Anyway, I just connected them, and the hope was tying all these together, and I'll show you a picture with it all in the engine. The hope was I would see something, because the idea was, for those that don't know, there's always a pressure wave. So there's a wave going in, and then it's a reflection wave. And when that reflection wave is happening, I was hoping like the air's gonna come in and the valve closes or whatever, or the reflection wave comes back up. This one at the same time, the wave's going down. So the energy would go boom. And then when it goes in reverse, this one's coming, you know, its waves now stop. So now this one's actually needing it and it would go back. So it'd be like feeding more. But I probably should have thought more about it, because in essence, when we're dealing with all this stuff, it's really just dealing with pressure differentials. At a certain point, they're going to equalize. And that's what this just did. So they only equalize their own. You might be like, well, duh, what's the difference between that doing it in the manifold? Well, my thought was too, is like, as a reflection wave comes up in the plenum, it dissipates. So if I could just grab it here, I could transfer it over, like what it still had energy to give to there. I didn't really think all the way through it about the pressures. All it will do is it will give it slightly more pressure, but they still have to equalize. It just won't. So it was kind of a letdown, but I wanted to try it. So that's what I did on the dyno. It was easy to do. I had all the lines hooked up, and then I just unhooked them and put the caps on and ran it again. Now, I know some of you are like, well, maybe this manifold did bad because you had all these in. No, I tried my hardest, and as you could tell there, the fittings aren't digging down into the port. So they're flush with the top. So maybe the hole might have made some difference, but I doubt it. I mean, just to give you an idea, I'm going to try to put this one up so I can show you. I mean, I think one got a little bit lower, that one. But all of them are like right there. So they're not really, it's just a hole. I don't think it made a difference as far as losing power on that deal. But I just wanted to see. Now, this isn't in the book only because I forgot about it. In the book, by the way, it still has the power with the tubes and without the tubes are in here. So that's in here. You won't have a clue what it's about, but now you do. This is a graph to show you what it did. And as you can tell, about almost nothing. The only thing I could tell you is here and here. And this is really hard to judge at this point on any dyno sheet, because really whenever you're rolling in. So the absorber's grabbing, so usually it flicks the power up and then it lets it eases down and you begin. That's usually why you might start your pull maybe a couple hundred RPM before what you really want to see, just so it gets out of this grabbing and it causes the torque to shoot up higher than what it actually is. That's why also whenever you see like an engine that's when they shoot nitrous and it's on the dyno, it always spikes up because it has that flip for a moment and then it comes down. It's not the engine did, it's the way the absorber grabbed it and causes it to read higher on that for just that. It doesn't actually make that much power. After that it does. Anyway, the point being is I pretty much ignore that. But I did see a little bit here with the Mule 38, which this is with tubes. The red's without. So, but otherwise they're pretty identical. So besides that little spot there, and that's a very little spot, I mean, there's not much difference at all. It's nothing. So it was like the worst case scenario happened. I thought, man, I'm gonna at least see, I hoping, of course, to see like a power difference up here, especially because you have more energy as the RPMs are turning more. So maybe same, and then really start maybe just a little gain. No, that's not what I wanted to see. Or I would be happy if I saw it go whoop and under, because then I'm like, wait a minute. If it's losing power, that means it's also doing something, so I can figure out how to do it the other way. Nothing. Kind of a letdown. A little bit there, but that's it. Anyway, thanks for watching the video. Hopefully right now I could tag on the picture of the manifold that got butchered. Oh, let me draw you a picture to show you what I mean about the port match real quick though. Okay, so let's pretend that this is the port of the head, and we'd have our valve that comes through down here. So the valve might be going like that. So you see it at the bottom. So in other words, this is you looking down the cylinder head, okay? The port match on the bad one, in case you're wondering what it looked like when I looked in, it would look like this. So I actually saw the cylinder head here, and that's about how it looked. I mean, I'm doing a bad drawing, but so did he. As bad as my lines looked, that's as bad as the port match looked. So at some points, like maybe through here, it was matching the port of the head. But for the majority of the parts, it wasn't, and it wasn't uniform. So it wasn't like, oh, it was only larger on one side or the other. No, it was ununiform. It was everywhere different. Not only that, this is us looking straight down. So we're looking at cylinder head, we look straight into the valve. If we look at it from the side view, so this would be like the air coming in this way, the port match was also like this. So in other words, they didn't port it match it, like bring it all the way out to here. They flared out the ends, just the ends. So the inside parts were still smaller than the head. So maybe that had the reason why it didn't make as much difference. I don't know. To me, it feels like it's worse to have it flared out the end because you're just ramming into the top here, creating some problems here and here, which maybe it helped this head or whatever. I don't know. But it definitely not something I would have normally done. I mean, I didn't port it match this anyway, but not something I normally would have thought would have helped it at all. And without having a stock one here, we'll never know. So anyway, there's your answer for that. Guys, thanks for the longer video. I've got one more to do, and that's next Sunday, and that's going to be comparing the 2-barrel manifolds, or these manifolds. 4 of them got used with not only a 4-barrel, but with a 2-barrel. And for some of you who are like, why do you care about 2 barrels? Because I know you've probably seen some other video out there and someone's like bragging about it. Here's the reason why. I never run 2 barrels. I don't. But Circle Track customers have to. There are several classes, because they're dumb, say, hey, you must run a 2-barrel to slow them down somehow. But anyway, that's the reason why there's a lot more guys. And I know if you're a drag racing guy, you think your world revolves around you. I promise you, there are probably 6 or 7 to 1 Circle Track cars that there are drag cars that actually race. Don't get me wrong, there's street cars all the time, but the ones that actually go to the strip are pretty rare. So if you take the ones that are actually at the drag strip and then go to Circle Track, it's 5 to 1. And not to mention this, they go through probably 3 or 4 engines to your one. So in other words, what I'm trying to say is it's actually more common than not. Anyway, not saying that 4 barrels aren't the most common, they are, but the point I'm trying to make is 2 barrels are, you in a drag racing community, is exceedingly rare. In the Circle Track community, it's probably 40% of the field of the tire cars are at the track. So anyway, remember, I'm No Superman. You guys take care.